Hello and welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith and today we're going to start our solo playthrough with our character or Gearlock chosen as Patches. He is going to be leaving the city of Obendar right here in Daelore, and this is the map that we're going to be traveling across in order to reach our tyrant, who is located in Shellfist, far away. We're going to have to head through forest areas and across, I guess, pathed areas, as well as streams and mountains and all kinds of swamps and everything else, all the way up to a city where we'll be able to tackle, or at least hopefully confront, Drellen Paleface. Now, just before we get moving into the round or typical round phases or game phases, I want to talk about the point baddies that I didn't actually filter out in the prior video because of just time. So I had done the 1 point baddies with you guys watching. 5 and 20 I hadn't, now I have. So both of those have been shuffled and set based on the 3 different types of baddie categories that are listed on the Tyrant's card down below. So at this point we are ready to go and everything is set. We've got it all worked out. Patches already has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of health. This of course matches to the health stat he has here. A couple quick notes of things that I made a mistake on in the prior video, which I did mention in the comments with a pinned comment, was when I talked about attack and defense, when you train these with a progress point that comes from, or sorry, a training point that comes from a successful encounter, if you ever get one, when you go ahead and try to train attack or defense, you're expected to roll the combination number, you're supposed to roll the combination of your starting stat, which would be 1 in this case for Patches, plus whatever stat die currently sits in here. So I would just be rolling 1, and I'd be rolling to not get any bones. On the attack, you only have 1 shot. On the defense, same thing. You do the exact same thing in terms of totaling how many dice you're going to roll, but you do get a reroll with the defense one. However, if you fail at either, you cannot use that same training point in order to up that or retry that same stat increase. You can't essentially fail at defense, reroll, you'd fail, and then say, okay, well, I'm going to use my stat to, or I'm going to use my training point to try to train it again. Essentially, it's blocked, and you have to worry. You have to move your training point to either attack or health or dexterity. So the game has a way of kind of eliminating you from being able to punch up your character in attack and defense beyond what's reasonable, really. So it's a gamble every single time, but you don't lose your training point when you fail at attack or defense. You just essentially block it off as an item you can potentially use it on. So that hopefully clears that up. I made that mistake in the previous video, so hopefully that that clarifies that for anybody that was watching the previous 2. So let's get into it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to read Drellen the Tyrant's Tyrant card so that we can understand a little bit more about this guy. So, Drellen Paleface. Ages ago, Drellen was banished from Obendar to the Poison Marshes for reasons no one can or is willing to recall. Instead of perishing, however, Drellen remains alive, face twisted and scarred from extended time in the swamps. He is but skin and bones, yet somehow he thrives in the bog. So this is the individual we are going after. You can actually kind of see in the bottom right there, there's 2 little pips kind of saying how long the game is. So he's on the lower side of things. We've got 10 days to encounter him, and we only need 6 progress points in order to be able to encounter him. And it's the 6th, at the 6th progress point, we would be able to, on the next day, encounter him if we want to. So you can see here, he would be in the location in the map of Daelore. He'd be in the spot closest to us because there's 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. This is the longest one away. This is the mid-range, and this is the shortest. And you can tell just based on how many progress points you'd need. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is where Drellen belongs in terms of distance away based on his progress points noted on his card in the top there, just above the days of 10. So we've got that all the way. Now we can actually start our first round. So how does this round? We have phases. They're considered game phases, essentially. And the very first one is actually called a new day. So essentially, when you start a new round, you always tick the day counter, 1 further. Because every single round essentially is a day of this particular game, or every single phase. So what you're going to do here on the first day is you're not going to rotate this. You're essentially, I mean, if there was a 0 on this counter, then you'd rotate it to 1, but essentially we're already on 1, so you don't rotate a day because otherwise you're losing one, you haven't done anything. So it stays put on the very first day. The next thing you do is you do an encounter. Now, encounters work pretty easily. You just take from your encounter deck, which you've pre-created prior. So I'm able to just kind of go ahead and grab this. We can read it and find out what we have to do. So this one here is a special encounter. And again, based on how we set up the deck in the previous video, it's a special card. And it's listed as 001. And this is essentially we know we have 3 cards in here that are going to help us on our journey before things start getting a little rough. So this says, and it makes thematic sense as well. So this one says leaving Obendar. So we're leaving the city right here, essentially. Okay? So we're leaving the Obendar, only 12 hours till dawn, and the send-off ceremony that will no doubt change the lives of every remaining Gearlock and likely every life in Daelore. Weapons and supplies are ready to go, but the night is young and adrenaline fills the veins. It's clear no sleep will be had tonight. There's sure to be some shady peddlers in the dark alleys ready to deal in loot. Then again, some last-minute training could pay a nice dividend by morning. What to do, what to do. So basically we have a choice here. We have to determine what we want to do. So this is just giving you some flavor text, and then you flip the card. When you flip the card, you're presented with a number of choices. And you'll see in the very, very top there, there's also some symbols. So when you see these for the first time, they can be a little confusing because you can kind of go, well, what do those mean? How do I know what I'm doing here makes any sense for what I want? Well, some of it's spelled out there, but some of it's not. So what isn't spelled out, in the first choice, it says you can squeeze in some last-minute self-improvement. So if we choose this, we're choosing to train. If we train, we gain 2 training points. When you gain training points, you're allowed, kind of in your reward phase, to essentially go ahead and spend those training points. So essentially how this works is when you play an encounter, if you're successful in your encounter, then you get whatever is part of this card. So typically what will happen is if you choose something, so if I chose this one up here, I would gain 2 training points, which I could then go ahead and use to upgrade patches. Now, at the very bottom, you'll notice something else. So say if I chose the 2 training points one, down here at the very bottom left, if this is like, it's kind of interesting because this one doesn't really have a fail condition. You're just choosing which one you want. So essentially you can either choose to get 2 training points, or you can shake down a shady peddler and get 1 training point, and this symbol right there specifies a free loot card, and it actually states right in the text that you draw 2 loot and choose to keep 1. So really, you're giving you a little bit of choice in how you want to play this, and to be honest, it's totally up to you and how you want to go about it. Once you go ahead and choose this, you automatically succeeded at the encounter because there was no fail condition, so you would grant yourself the rewards shown at the bottom of the card, and this is considered 1 progress point towards the total that you need in order to encounter Drellen. So this one is a very simplistic one because it's at the very, very beginning of the scenario. And again, like I told you before, these are set in stone when you're playing solo in order to give you a little bit of a boost at the beginning, because then things get a little tougher, quite a bit tougher. So for me, I'm actually going to go ahead, and just so you guys are aware as well, when we start going through these encounters, there will be like a scenario sometimes, or maybe this could force a battle or something. So a choice could actually initiate a battle, which then you need to win in order to get some of these rewards at the bottom. And if you fail it, well, then you don't get the rewards and things like that. So that can all kind of come into play. Now, if you're ever confused about the symbols on the card, as they state, you do have your handy reference sheet, and this is where this game really shines in that there's the Gearlock Adventuring Reference Guide, and this is a 1-sheet cover on everything. So you can see right there, the second one down, it says this choice does not result in a battle, may still have requirements for success. So essentially, that symbol that I just read off to you is the 2 symbols in the top right corner of both of those choices. So there's no battle that results in either of those choices unless something specifies there's some type of success result. In this case, this one's very simplistic. I just choose. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the top one. So I'm going to pick squeeze in some last minute self-improvement, gain 2 training points. So that's great news. So essentially that's going to allow me to train. Now, okay, so essentially what we go ahead and we see whether we're successful in most situations, and we are, because this one's just a simple choice. So then what happens is you move to the reward phase. When you move to the reward phase, you essentially gain these rewards based on your success. So we were successful because there was no fail condition, so we gain these 2 training points as well as the 1 point for the towards the progress of our journey. So what we can actually do is now with these 2 training points, we can actually choose to actually, in the rewards phase, go ahead and train something. So when you want to train something, this is where the door really opens up. So we have essentially 2 training points to spend across a number of skills, or we could go for this area up here with our hard stats, essentially. So like I mentioned in previous videos, we can come into here and you have to start where the stars are. So we have to, if we wanted to use 1 training point, it would be a guaranteed success in the skills matrix as long as you're doing them in order. So anything with a star is the one you have to have first, and then after that you can kind of go whichever, you can branch down whichever path you want. If there's 2 arrows, you can go down whichever path you want that way, but you have to follow it. Whereas this, like this one here, shows us the line in the middle. It means both of these are available from the start. They both have stars. You can pick and choose which one you want. So this is where it kind of becomes interesting, because you sit there and go, well, you know, do I want any of these things? You've got a med kit. I've got a med kit, nutrients, stem kit, and toxins. So, you know, sometimes it's also difficult to sit there and think about what would be most useful. But like I told you in the previous video, if you're unsure at the very beginning, you can always use your beginning build and strat, which says for your skills, take the med kit first, then take nutrients for more sustainability, or toxins to help party do some damage to get around some thick skin. Against hard-hitting baddies, your stem line is best, though medic skills are safer. So essentially what they're saying is go for the med kit first, and then go from there, maybe go for the stem kit or nutrients afterwards. But the thing is, you have to keep in mind is when you're going to go ahead and roll for patches, for instance, that you're typically, as of right now, we have a total roll of 2 dice. That's how many dice we can roll in total. So if I get the med kit, when I have my first turn to start, I would have a med kit die, I'd have 1 attack die and 1 defense die, but I can only roll 2 dice. And this is where the dice building element comes in, because once you start rolling those dice, some of them end up going into active slots, some of them end up being exhausted when they're used, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of game and meat behind everything here. So what do I want to pick, essentially, is my question. So I do have all of this. This is wonderful, but I am kind of eyeing this area first. And yes, I think the medkit would make sense, but I think to start, I'm actually going to worry about bumping this area up first. And what I really want to focus on is my really weak attack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a roll to train my attack. When you do a roll to train, you start with your starting stat. So 1, that's 1 die I'll be rolling, plus whatever stat die you have in here, which for me is 0. So I'm rolling 1 dice. So I'm just going to take my 1 attack die, and I'm going to go ahead and we're going to roll this. And if I get a bone, I failed my training attempt. I didn't. I passed it. I succeeded. So when you succeed, you automatically get that training point added in. So now when I go ahead to attack in future rounds in battle, I will be rolling 2 attack dice. Now remember the dex issue, because it's nice. Now I'm going to have an attack dice available, another attack dice available, and a defense dice. It would make sense to potentially bump my dexterity up to 3 so I can roll all 3. That would make sense. So I'm going to go that route, and I'm going to bump up my dexterity. So I'm going to go, and the dexterity bump is automatic. So this is my 2nd training point going into dexterity. So now my 2 training points have been completely used. So I'm a little bit stronger than when I started, but again, I haven't unlocked any skills yet. That was personal choice on my end. It may not be how you play it. So at this point now, we go ahead and we resolve the encounter cards. So we've got all this, we've got all the training points done. Now we resolve the 1 progress point at the bottom. This card is just, in terms of referencing purposes, it just makes sense. I like to just kind of put it underneath the tyrant in question, and just enough that you can see the point. So just to kind of reference later on, like how many progress points you actually have in play. So again, a very, very simplistic round. Now this is where things get a little interesting. So what ends up happening here is when you finish the reward phase, then you move into what's considered kind of like your recovery phase. And in your recovery phase, you can do things like lock picking. So for instance, if you had a trove loot in your possession, you can choose to try to attempt to unlock it. The other thing you can do, and again, you can only pick one of these certain things in recovery, and you can see them right here on the reference card. Lock picking, loot trading, so loot trading with your friends or other gear locks, which of course when you're playing solo doesn't really apply, but it does. You'd think it wouldn't, but it does. And the reason it does is there's actually a really, really cool thing you can do when you trade loot. So, or sorry, I'm thinking of something different, my mistake. So you can't trade loot, but you can do an individual option when you're playing solo. And you can see that specified right here. So these are the things you can essentially do when you're going through your recovery phase. And so trade loot for me, any loot, any amount to anyone makes no sense because I'm only playing one gear lock. Making a lock picking attempt, no sense for me right now. I don't have any trove loot. Individual options, it says each gear lock may choose one of the following. So you can rest and recover to heal HP to full. Well, as you saw from before, we haven't battled yet, so my HP is completely full. I'm already all the way up, so I'm good there. Search for better loot. So this is something I could potentially do, but it does have a little criteria there of having to discard one loot, and then you get to roll 6 attack die for each bone you get to reveal a loot card and may keep one. You can only keep one of them. And it's may, you don't even have to keep it. And then the other one, scout the area. So the thing is, I have no loot to discard. I have no need to rest and recover. So I'm going to scout the area. When you scout the area, you roll a d6 and then you reveal a baddie based on your roll. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to grab the d6 if I can actually find it here. There it is. And we're going to roll this and see what we get. We got a 3. So with a 3, what does a 3 do? 3 is reveal a 1-point baddie. Okay, so a 1 to a 3, it says reveal a 1-point baddie. So what this allows me to do is to go to the stack, and essentially I'm scouting ahead. It's almost like I'm in the city, and well, actually at this point, sorry, one thing I did forget to do was when I resolve this progress point right here, you can essentially move your progress along the track. So now I'm here. So what's happening is now you can thematically think that I'm kind of scouting ahead, looking ahead to see what's up here. I want to kind of know what's going on in the area. So I chose to scout the area. I've rolled a 3. I'm going to take a look at the stack of chips here to see what potentially could be coming up along my travels or what I'm seeing in the distance. And I found it appears to be a Goblin Rider. So I found a Goblin Rider. Now, in terms of what's on this chip, so you guys understand, he's got an attack die of 1. He's got mischief of 1, which I'm not familiar with, but I believe he takes away from your attack, or takes away from your active dice section when he plays. And he's got a health limit of 3, so he's got 3 kind of like HP underneath of him. His initiative would be 4 in terms of the initiative meter here. And then he'll always go and attack the weakest gear lock. You can see that by the little crosshairs on the dude there in the picture, right above the name. If his arms are down, it means he's going to go after the weakest character. If his arms are up, it means he's going to go after the strongest character. It's kind of interesting. This also means with the cross that he's a melee character. It lines up with the melee attack. So he has to be adjacent orthogonally in order to attack me. He can't attack me diagonal. If you have a ranged character come out on a mat, they can actually hit anyone from anywhere without even moving. So that can be pretty nasty. But the melee guys always have to be, kind of, if I was here, he'd have to be either here, 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 or here to attack me. He could not be here to attack me. Okay, so that just so you understand. So anyway, I've scouted the area, and it says here that once you've revealed, you may cycle the baddie to the bottom of the active stack. So if I don't like this guy, or I think he's kind of a pain, or he's too beefy, he's too tough for me, I could cycle him to the bottom of this pile. But I actually don't mind him, and when you don't mind what you've scouted, you actually leave him face up on the pile, because you haven't actually encountered him yet, but essentially you've revealed him, you know he's coming, you know you're going to encounter him at some point, you're almost kind of happy with it, or at least you're you've kind of caught him off guard and you know who he is, essentially. So that's essentially it. That ends the recovery phase, and at the end of the recovery phase, that's essentially the end of the day. So then the whole thing just starts again, right from the beginning with the day counter cycling. So this is a perfect time to probably sit back, stop the video, and we will move into day number 2 in the next video, where I think things are going to progress into the battle mat area, where we'll probably be seeing our very first battle using patches as we kind of explore Daelore, and we've left Ebendar and we're kind of heading along the trail all the way up to Shalefist in the end. So we'll see how this goes. Hope you guys are enjoying it. So far, not too much has happened, but I guarantee you it will not take long for a whole bunch of stuff to happen. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks again for watching. Give me a thumbs up if you like what you see, if you're enjoying the game and the playthrough, and subscribe if you haven't, and I guess I'll see you in the next one. Thanks again for watching, and keep on rolling solo.